So, you've read the title of this video and are now thinking, wow, this is going to be the most pretentious video in the universe. And yeah, you're probably right. Just by doing this, I'm implying that I know better than someone else how to write a story. But let's keep a few things in mind. First, the creative team of Star vs. the Forces of Evil were under a lot of constraints that I am not. I can sit here and put my unfiltered imagination onto a page, while the actual hard workers had to contend with budgets, deadlines, and of course, the ever-present mouse looming over their shoulder. This isn't me making fun of people or trying to put myself up on a pedestal. Think of it more as a creative exercise. Though I will be making critiques, all of them pertain to what I would like to see in a show. You may like it better the way it is, or you may like something completely different. The point is, this is just for fun, guys, so let's all chill out. With that out of the way, let's get this party started. Right out of the gate, let's triage this shit and start off with the worst problem of the show. Marco. Something has to be done. This show has two main characters that are in almost every episode, and one of them is the least interesting human being to ever exist. Trying to describe his character is like trying to hold onto a cloud. He is utterly insubstantial, but even worse than that, he's entirely inessential. Despite always being around, he rarely plays an important role in the actual plot, and when he does nothing that means he couldn't be replaced by any other character. So what? We just get rid of this character? Actually, no, because that wouldn't really improve anything. It would be kind of like subtracting 0 from an equation. Everything would be exactly the same. Instead, we're going to change Marco. We can rebuild him. Faster. Stronger. Better. The main reason we keep him around is because he's in a perfect position to supply something the show desperately needs. He's there to provide a foil for Star, or in other words, to supply something for Star's character to bounce off of. This makes life pretty easy for us, because we already have Star's character, so we just make Marco into her opposite. Star is peppy, excitable, and always happy to meet new people and see new things. So we make Marco a bit more cynical. Not mean, necessarily, maybe just kind of a lower energy person. Maybe he prefers not to be noticed. Maybe that's why he always wears that hoodie, so he can keep his hood up, his head down, and get by without making waves. Basically, he's just lonely. So when Star shows up and his life gets done turned upside down, there's a bit of a conflict between the two. Keep in mind, we're not trying to make Marco edgy, we're just trying to define him a little bit more. Because, as he is, you can barely believe he was a person before the show began. As it stands, we have these two worthless characters who are apparently Marco's friends. Learning how and why Marco is friends with these characters should give us some context into who Marco is. But they don't. They just sort of exist as living jokes. Nothing concrete is ever established about them, so we're just gonna erase these two from existence. We'll let Marco's self-isolation and unwillingness to interact with other people help define him. Maybe we'll change Marco's introduction to Star. Have it be some well-meaning teacher/counselor trying to help him break out of his comfort zone. Just an opening scene with him like that would be enough to give us an idea of who he is. And bam, Marco's a human being now. Now, it's time to move on to the actual main character of the show, Star. While changing the character of Marco is like writing on a blank piece of paper, Star already has a personality. In fact, her personality is pretty much the pulse of the whole show in the first season. Check any given scene, and you'll find that the tone is pretty much entirely dictated by her mood, and honestly, I don't think much needs changing for Star. It really makes more sense that the show is built around her. There are a few minor details that could be tweaked, however, not concerning her personality, but just how she acts. Magical powers aside, she kinda just acts like a regular Earth teenager. The first season does little to acknowledge the fact that she is a princess and was raised in a castle, and presumably held to some standard of royal etiquette by her mother, who, even in this season, is established to be somewhat overbearing. I feel like this is a real missed opportunity for her, and a good way to show off another side of her character. Answer this. Why does Star like being on Earth so much? What if she's used to dealing with a suffocating amount of rules and etiquette, and on Earth she's suddenly free of all those things? The best thing about Earth is that she doesn't have to be a princess anymore. This would give her a real reason to enjoy being on Earth, whereas in the current show, Earth life seems like a significant downgrade from the freedom she was enjoying before. This ties in nicely to the themes of the show and also ties into her arc later in the seasons, when she must inevitably return to that princess life. But we're not getting into that today. So we have our two leads. What do we do with them? Well, the most important thing I would do to the first season of the show is dedicate most of it to Star and Marco just becoming friends. There's so much space in the season for the friendship to grow organically. The reason we make them opposites is the more they differ from each other, the more they highlight each other's unique aspects. The show already tries to do this to a small degree, but Marco just never really gets a chance to shine, and so Star just sort of has to exist in a vacuum. I never really liked how they were quote-unquote best friends by episode 2 anyway. By having them clash, it highlights both their personalities, giving us a better idea of who they are. So let's have them clash. In the show, Star basically just does whatever she wants, and Marco just has to be annoyed and put up with it. But maybe Star goes a little bit too far, and Marco gets fed up with it. And we have an episode where Marco learns he needs to grow a backbone and stand up for himself more, and Star learns she needs to respect people's boundaries more. So they get to know each other a little bit more, and maybe they grow a little bit more. Let them slowly become friends instead of just assuming they are. That way, when things get serious later on, there's more of a foothold for us to care about these characters. Taking this angle not only lets us do a lot of cool things with the characters, but with the show as a whole. Season 1 in particular is in dire need of plot threads, so here's a few we could add with the adjustments made thus far. What if one time Ludo gets really close to stealing the wand, and Star just barely fights him off? She wins, but almost losing the wand really upsets her. And Marco, along with the audience, get to see how much pressure she's under as a princess. We understand that despite her peppy attitude, her family legacy is a heavy burden to bear. And from this, both Marco and the audience grow to respect her a little bit more. How about we change it so Marco isn't already a ninja warrior when they first meet? Maybe after seeing how important protecting the wand is to Star, he takes up karate to help her out. Boom, there's an arc for Marco and his relationship with Star. Then later, when Marco leads his little revolution in St. Olga's, Star, along with the audience, get to see that despite his propensity to keep his head down, he's willing to stand up for things he believes in and take action against injustice. And so, Star, along with the audience, grow to understand him a little bit more. By having these characters grow and learn to get along slowly, it not only gives us something to watch over the course of the season, but also makes the development feel more genuine when it happens. Alright, so do you see what we did here? Marco starts out as a sad, lonely boy, then he learns to stand up for himself, then he learns to stand up for his friends, then he learns to stand up for his beliefs. That's called a character arc. Bitch. And it's satisfying because we really get to watch and understand the progress that was made. Here's an idea for Marco. What if the school that Star and Marco go to isn't just a really boring, ordinary high school? Maybe it's a sad and oppressive place where kids are legitimately treated unfairly. But Marco just sort of accepts it the way it is because that's how it's always been. But when Marco visits St. Olga's, he realizes that it's a dark reflection of his own school. So, when he returns to Earth, he starts working to make his school a better place. Maybe in doing so, our sad, lonely boy finally breaks out of his shell and starts to stand out. And hey, maybe this is what causes his longtime crush Jackie to finally take notice of him. Look at us tying stuff together. And this is all just a subplot. While the friendship and character development stuff is happening, we also have the main plot of the show. So what is the main plot of the show? Well, the central conflict is Ludo trying to steal Star's wand. This is probably going to be the biggest change in the structure of the season, but here's my pitch. When Ludo shows up, things are a little different. Instead of the entire entourage, just one monster. Each monster is unique and has their own quirks. Star and Marco have to figure out a way to beat them. So yeah, a literal monster of the week style. This would help the show in so many ways, it's going to take an entire extra paragraph just to describe them all. First, we get a brand new, more intimate fight every time Ludo shows up, instead of just the same fight over and over again. Second, it's going to improve the finale a lot. When the season ends and Star goes in to rescue Marco, she takes on all the monsters we've met up to this point all at once. And with a little help from Buffrog, she thrashes all of them. This not only makes it a better capstone to the season, but shows how much Star has grown over the course of our time with her. Much more so than just her going in and doing the same thing she's been doing for the entire season. Third, it adds a new dimension to Toffee's appearance. Because maybe he's like, the problem, Ludo, is that you're too focused on defeating Star in battle, when all you really need to do is steal that wand, or something like that. Make his work behind the scenes seem more subversive and sneaky, instead of just, the same stuff we've always been doing. Thing number 4. Having all the monsters be minor characters in their own right instead of just a bunch of goons really helps the show in the long run as we get deeper into the unfair treatment of monsters plot, as well as tying nicely into the overall theme. And finally, this change will give Ludo more weight in the show in general, whereas it stands, what Ludo's doing doesn't really feel important until, the final episode. You'll notice I'm not exactly writing individual episodes for the show. And I would do that, but then this video would be really long, and Disney isn't exactly paying me anything, so yeah. But what I'm trying to demonstrate is how much potential this show has. There's so much room to do interesting things. But most of the episodes are kinda like SpongeBob episodes. And hey, don't get me wrong, everybody likes SpongeBob, but this show is obviously not trying to be SpongeBob. It's trying to have a plot. And before you say I'm trying to kill the humor of the show can still be funny while having all these changes. The problem isn't when an episode has jokes, it's when the entire episode is a joke. Like an episode of SpongeBob. Okay, geez. I'm about 1,000 words into this and I've only tackled the first season, which is a lot for me because I usually try to be concise with this stuff. Anyway, if you've been kind enough to watch to the end of this video, I'd like to express again that this is not meant as a takedown of the show. I like this show. I like Star. And I think it tackles some interesting themes that not many other shows have covered. At least somewhat. In the immortal words of the Endless One himself, when you really love something, you also hate it. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching this creative exercise as much as I've enjoyed writing it. And I'd love to hear other people's ideas and feedback in the comments. And hey, have a nice day.